Hey, thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. If you're new here, thank you so much for giving me a try. Today we have a guest who comes on once a month. I'm going to have him introduce himself to you all.
Hi, yes. Hello, I'm Jermaine Morris. I'm a coach and consultant based out of Sacramento, California. My practice is based around a DISC assessment, which is basically a test that helps people identify their traits in regards to decision making, communication, systems orientated. Helps people understand how they are when things are okay and when things aren't as okay. I like to operate under the premise of self awareness without judgment, and it's great professionally as well as personally. Good
Yeah,
tool to
I
use.
agree. Yeah, I seen a post I shared and it said kids can know math and English and all these things, but if they don't understand their emotions, they're not aware, all that stuff doesn't matter. Did you think that plays into a little bit of what you do with people that you work with in regards to helping them understand themselves better?
Yeah, because I don't think there's a really an intentional focus on that. We're
Hmm.
taught things, we're taught
Hmm.
systems, but there's not a lot of things, especially with small kids. Well, little kids like preschool maybe, but once you get past first grade, there's not really an emphasis on ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, about knowing what am I feeling and what do I do with these feelings and how are these feelings showing up. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of emphasis on that, and with a lot of parents, we either don't have time or are not. Don't, some cases lack the verbiage to explain it to them ourselves.
Right. And then how does that hinder people, right? Because that's one of my pet peeves about understanding how important and valuable self-awareness is, and understanding yourself, but then the lack of education around it in this country. But how important is that self-awareness without judgment for people that are listening that may not have thought deeply about that?
It's huge because a lot of times the system is designed to reward or discipline our behavior. But if you're not sure the motivation behind it or kind of what we're doing, you can constantly find yourself on the wrong end of that. And so you're dealing with the things in life about how we behave, but we never really had the chance to really observe and kind of dissect why we're doing the things we're doing and how that's showing up in our lives and how
Yeah,
we what we can do about that. And so you're constantly like, man, I'm always in trouble,
yeah,
or
yeah,
I'm always on the outs with people, or
yeah,
and so we'll judge ourselves based upon the outcome instead of being getting a chance to understand our motives and intentions and how that
yeah,
directs our behavior.
yeah. That when you say the society rewards, an example that comes up is people that are kind of workaholics and they get bonuses and they get accolades from their boss, but everything else outside of work is falling apart.
Yeah.
That I don't know why that just sticks out for me when you talk about that, because people don't realize, like, the quote unquote reward, is it really worth it?
Well, yeah. So depending upon your life, who's around you. So say you get rewarded for being a workaholic. So you're getting pats on the back, you're getting financial compensation, you're getting the reputation of being the go-to or the workhorse or the you can count on me individual. So you're being affirmed for the behavior. Um, but if we don't understand why we're doing it, like that could overworking ourselves in some regards is a trauma response. Sometimes it's due to lack of identification. Like we're trying to do things to belong. Like there's a reason why you show up and are willing to work 12 hours a day that may not be financial. And so if that's what we're doing and we're being rewarded, we're being affirmed for the behavior, um, and there's no consequence on the other side. Maybe we don't have a significant other or we don't have children or whatever. So there's nobody telling you, oh, you're gone too long or you're working too much. We can pour into that behavior and to our detriment. Like we work ourselves to the grave, we'll work ourselves to the bone. just because we didn't understand, what that push was.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. Now every year you have a theme. I feel like we've been doing this probably 2 or 3 years. At the top of the year, you have a theme that you kind of come up with, and so we would love to hear about that theme
Yeah.
for 2024.
Yeah, I was trying to kind of an overarching kind of, theme for the year. And so this year for 2024, just kind of on the heels of what I was hearing a lot of at the end of last year, is knowing your measurements, knowing our measurements. And what I mean by that is, say if you're going to do a tailor, if you're going to get a suit, if you're going to get a dress, and knowing what our actual measurements are, knowing how much length we have, how much depth we have in the particular areas for where it is that we're trying to put ourselves into. And so our measurements, how much communication do I actually need? How much patience do I actually have? How much bandwidth do I have to extend myself? What are the limits to what I can take on or be a part of? Because if we don't, we'll walk into a shop and we'll say, I need a size 38 pants. And we're a 32 and we're swimming in our situation. Or we're a 44 and things are way too tight. But in our mind, we're thinking of what we want, but that's not actually where we are. And so when we start thinking, what are my measurements? Okay, it's taking a real an introspective look about, okay, it's not about what they're doing or what their behavior is. It's what is my place in this? What is it that I need? And what is the space that I'm taking up in this situation?
Well, and you gave an example, a literal example of measurements with pants, and physically sometimes it's easier for us to like accept and reconcile and make that like transition. I can only imagine, like when you talk about your measurements of how I fit a situation and what I need, if you haven't been taught your bandwidth, or I can see how people can easily continue to overflow and underflow in the ways that may not work for them and not realize it because they've gotten used to wearing it with, I'm using the pants, like wearing their pants so big, it's become normalized, right? Like where they just adjust. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's you'll hear phrases like people who can't read the room.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
they're used to be a certain behavior. They're used to doing something, and that doesn't fit what this is.
Yeah.
Or people who are constantly feeling overwhelmed. Okay, well, based upon how we've structured our life,
Yeah.
you're constantly you're trying to button these pants, and they just never seem to button all the way.
Yeah.
Like we're always feeling like we got our guts sucked in. We're
Yeah.
always feeling like we have to stand and sit a certain way. We're never comfortable. We're never at ease. We have to be in this particular position, and we don't feel like we have motion. We don't have room to wiggle. And so it's not always and we can equate that to the situation, but not realizing like, okay, I put myself in a pair of pants that's too tight for me.
Right, right, right. Yeah. And it has to be tough because, I know we've talked about this before, but I just think about people have wrapped their identity around certain ways and habits, even if it's not, and it's hard, when I work with people and it's like, I know that's not what they want. They find themselves continue to gravitate towards those bigger pants, even though it's tripping them up and it's always falling and they can't like keep them on, right? Which, sticking with the literal example, it's like that's not what they want, but they don't. It's hard to see themselves out of that position because it's always been their identity.
Yeah. And so, I'm gonna kill this analogy to death. A lot of us, if we look back, if we're of a particular age, we can look back at the eras of the clothes we used to wear. Like if you look back at your closet and just pan, there's probably a good 20% of that closet you will probably never wear again. There's some sequence joints in there. There's some super tight, some super baggy, some trendy stuff. There's just like, but there was a time when we felt like that was where we are. For some of us now, as we're trying to figure out what to do, it's okay if it's not working right now. Like, and so if we never learned how to identify these things, we never learned how to work on these things. Okay, these are the bell bottoms that I may never wear again. It's okay for that time, but now, okay, now I understand. So now I'm going to start making some changes because this lifestyle is out of style for me. This is not working. This is not fitting. This is not serving me. And so, kind of back to the original point you were saying, it would be great if we'd have learned this as children. It would have been amazing if we'd have learned, somebody would have spoken to us about our can and won't do list, about our needs and wants, about how we show up in places and how to show up for the life that is we want and not just be reactionary to the one that's in front of us. That would have been amazing. But if we didn't learn those things and we're now in our 20s, 30s, even 40s, 50s and up, we can still go to the tailor. We can still get our measurements and we can still, change the outfit.
Yeah. And, when I'll have a first session with somebody and check in after, and I'll say like, what stuck out. One of the things that people are comforted by is like, oh, like, this is why I'm this way, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with me. That was just the way I responded to life, these are adults I work with. And it's kind of sad that there's so many people that feel like they're defected or they're broken, not realizing that their body just adjusted to the environment and they learned how to identify in a certain way or do things a certain way. So it's something I just, like, as we're talking about this, I want people to know as you're thinking about learning your measurements. And sometimes it's like, dang, I can't believe I was wearing those baggy pants. Nobody told me. But it's okay. You had to adjust to the environment.
Flip back to some folks 2001, 2002 photos with those 5X jerseys on and those super long white tees, T-shirts down to their knees.
Some of our listeners were just born.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yes, you too. Yeah, and that's why I focus under the self-awareness without judgment. So this is not, I should have learned this by now. This is not beating myself up for not have picked these things up before. It's just about understanding, okay, this is how I've been, and these have been the results of how I've been, and I would like to see some different results. Therefore, I would like to make some new changes. And it's as simple as that. All the extra shouldn't have, why they didn't and who didn't do that. Like, that's going to be energy that could be better served in the direction we want to go in, as opposed to constantly looking at the way we didn't want to go.
When you have people that say should, is that kind of what you kind of help them see, like you're wasting energy in that space, in that mental space?
Should land, a highly populated place with a bunch of miserable people.
Yeah.
Should. There's no debate for should. There's no argument for should. Should is a feeling.
Yeah.
And because the thing about should, just briefly, if it's real, then we're having an accountability conversation.
Yeah.
Like, this was something that was supposed to have been done because it was already established that this was what was going to happen, and somebody did not do what was already established that they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
So we're having an accountability conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the should we're discussing, then that's one thing. Mm-hmm. But if it's just, they should have taught me, well, based upon what? Mm-hmm. An expectation that was never qualified, that the person that we put that on may not have even knew existed.
Yeah.
They did what they did with what they knew and had experienced at the time of the event.
Yeah.
And whatever we want to put on them for, well, they should have known better. Really? Who raised them? Mm-hmm. They should have did this. Well, what environment did they come from that information was present? Like, so when people start down the should road, that's a lot of energy that goes down a rabbit hole. That, like I said, if we don't have an accountability conversation, that's one thing. But there's a lot of better ways to serve that energy.
Yeah. And I want to I want to go into thinking about how people can think about learning their measurements. Like, what does that look like? But I want to pause for a second, because I also want people to know, because you make a great point, which comes up a lot, I think, for people, what people should have known. And I think about people's parents and how people have struggled with some of their history or how they were raised or wasn't raised, and how that hinders them. You could be 30, 40, 50 years old, you could keep saying what somebody should have done. And I feel like that hinders people from making that next step. And like Jermaine is saying, and this is not to negate whatever someone's gone through, but also recognizing that they only did what they knew how, even though it wasn't the best thing for you. Like your the mindset around it, you're allowing it to hinder you from being the best version of you, I feel like.
Yeah. We put a lot of things on people on the aftermath of our experiences and encounters, and we place that conclusion on people to whatever situation they came up with. Like, okay, because you were this type of parent, this is how I came out now at 30 years old. Okay, but when they were your parent, they were 25. They were younger than you are now, addressing the conclusion of where you're standing today. What information did they have at the point when they were raising you?
Right.
You know, what was instilled to them, and then not only what was taught to them, what was their understanding of what was taught? Yeah, maybe grandpa or grandma told them something, but it didn't resonate to them yet.
Right.
It took after having you to realize that, okay, I should have done that. You know, and so if we're standing around waiting for somebody else to, even if somebody came up and said, you're right, I should have done something different, nothing changes. So you still have to take that energy. And even now it's confirmed of what we believe, that something should have been different. Okay, we still have to take that energy and do the work. So better to just circumvent that whole process of spinning our wheels in that spiraling space. Let's just take that energy now and start putting it towards the life that we do want.
And that doesn't excuse behavior, right? So and I think that's where people, especially if you haven't been told a sorry or you're right, that's even harder to like reconcile with. But your lack of reconciling is probably creating a lot of chaos and dysfunction in your life if you find yourself holding on to what should have happened growing up. And I know a lot of people are stuck in that space. So
yeah, and that definitely segues into how our measurements are perceived by us.
Nice. Okay.
You know, that unresolved emotions and feelings that I'm sorry, we've been waiting 35 years to hear, is taking up space. It's bloating when you're trying to get your waist measured. It's not a real number.
Yeah.
So it's taking up space that's not necessarily there. So when you get your measurements based upon this extra stuff we're carrying, it's why our clothes don't fit right. Why our situation isn't quite right. Because these aren't real numbers, because we're carrying around a bunch of stuff that's not actually ourselves. We've got the resentment from that person, the unresolved issues from this one, the processed stuff from over here, and all that's strapped to us. And when we can start clearing some of that stuff out, we can get the real number, like the real measurements, because we don't know how much space we're taking up, because we see ourselves for what we think we are, but we don't realize we have all this stuff attached to us. So we take up more space than we think we do. We require more energy than we think we require. We require of others more than we think that we need. You know, if you try to get into a car with a backpack on, you figure out, oh, this car is tiny. No, if you took the backpack off, you'd fit just fine. Like, you don't realize the space you're taking up based upon the unresolved stuff you're carrying around with you.
Right. And when you say you don't realize the space you're taking up, them feelings, those emotions around it, they feel so real, and honor those emotions. We're not telling you to not honor them, but to make your decision or your movements based off of them is a problem. I think a lot of those emotions are emotions that you may have had as children too, that's coming up that you never really identified. And so as adults, unfortunately, it still rings true. And there's a lot of extra space that's preventing you from actually seeing like what is, not like what the feeling, because the feelings, like I use an example of if you had sunglasses on and it, it looked pink outside because you had a pink tint. And it really seems like it's pink, even though me and Jermaine may say like, no, actually it's not pink. but you're determined. That's the way the feelings are. Like they
Yeah.
really it feel, but it's because it's like, oh, I got these on, and we take them off, right?
Yeah.
And so that awareness and that clarity, it takes time to get to. People don't realize how hard it is to be still. I think that people have good intentions when they talk about stillness and care, but it's actually really challenging to do that when you're not used to doing that and taking in everything. Like you've been wearing these pink shades, all of a sudden it's bright, and it's like, whoa, that's a lot. Let me put these shades back on.
Every time you take them off, your eyes are kind of squinting and you can't quite see. And too many of us can't sit with that process to let our eyes get acclimated.
Yeah, it's a lot.
As soon as it's like straining, I can't see. The first thing we do is put the glasses back on.
Put it back on. Let me get back to my whatever
this is the deal. I can function with the glasses on. Like I can. Yeah, but the room isn't really pink. Yeah,
it's fine. I'll deal with it. And it hinders us. Yeah.
That may not be the real color that I'm looking at. That may not be the real true situation, but I can function. I can maneuver through it. But when I take the glasses off, initially I can't see it all.
Yeah.
And that space of getting acclimated is a space that a lot of people run from.
Yeah.
And so as soon as it's like, I can't see, just put them back on. If you can work through that time, then not only will you be able to see, but you'll be able to see with clarity and what's actually in front of you. Not through the tint of what you've been accustomed to.
And that's a real powerful experience and powerful, and it shows the power you have within. I always talk about people having power. And, when you're dependent on someone else, or when you're only using your emotions to dictate life, it feels like everything is happening to you all the time. And that doesn't feel like a good way to operate in life, is, when that's happening.
That reactionary space of I'm always on the defense. I just always got to deal with what life is happening. Gentleman, he had taught it to me years ago. He said about being the thermostat, not the thermometer. In regards to where if it's 100 degrees outside, or if it's 40 degrees outside, or 65 or whatever, if you want your room to be 72, that's your ideal temperature. You're doing things to get yourself at 72. You're the thermostat. So on some days when it's 100, it takes a lot of extra work for your AC to get it down to 72 if it's 100 and plus outside. Some days, if it's 70 and you want to 72, it's very minimal. But you know where you're trying to be at, and you know what you're trying to do. When you're the thermometer, you're 100 today. You're 13 tomorrow.
Right.
You're 72 today. It's all over the place, and you're just you're always reacting to, do I need a coat? Do I need some shorts? Do I need this? Do I need that? And you're constantly trying to flip who you are on a day-to-day basis, situationally and circumstantially, to fit whatever's going on. Now, we may not be able to be ideal and always have the perfect climate for us, but if we're intentional about how much energy we have to give, we may not have the energy to get it to 72 when it's 110 outside. We just may not have the capability to get it down there. But if it's like, okay, I understand I don't have that kind of energy in me. What's bearable? 78. Okay, let me do my best to get it down to 78. And that could be manageable. It's not ideal. I'm still sweating a little bit, but I can deal with 78. I can't deal with 110. I can deal with 78. So let me put some things in place to get there, as opposed to just baking at 110, feeling like there's nothing I can do, and I just have to suffer with this situation until something externally changes, until the sun goes down or somebody else brings me some water.
Yeah, dang, that's what it feels like, to not feel like you have power and things that are just happening to you. So it sounds like the first thing you want people to think about doing is being aware of their kind of history and circumstances.
Yeah, even if you can't, maybe before you even go deep today, let's start where you are with what you've got. How much can I really deal with people? How much do I really like to talk to people? How much social battery do I really have? How much communication do I have to give, as well as how much do I need to receive? Am I somebody that's a talker, but I don't like to listen? Am I somebody that's a listener who doesn't like to talk?
Mm-hmm.
Am I somebody who likes to just talk and listen and go for hours and hours? Am I somebody who does not want to be bothered at all one way or the other?
Mm-hmm.
Like what's the level of communication that I need? Let me okay, I've got a good idea that I really don't like to talk to people like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I know that about myself, how many situations do I keep putting myself in where I have to constantly communicate?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that may be why my anxiety is a little higher than maybe it could be.
Yep.
You know, I'm somebody who needs to talk all the time, but yet I find myself in isolation. I don't reach out. I don't have a good social net. Might be why my depression may be a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
You know, okay, I need to engage more, or I need to engage less. Like this is just like then you go to tell we're not getting on the exact measurements. We're just getting ballpark right now. Let's get this arm length. Let's get this waistline. Let's figure out where we're at. You know, how much bandwidth do I have? Am I somebody who's a multitasker? Can I really take on a bunch of projects? Yes. Okay. How much have I got going on in my life? Got a lot of downtime. Okay, maybe why I feel a little inadequate sometimes. I feel like I'm not very productive. I start to beat myself up over I should be further than where I am. I'm not engaged in enough things or putting enough effort. Or I can't multitask that well. I can't take on a lot of projects. Okay, well, what does my life look like? I'm getting pulled in every direction.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why I always feel stressed. I'm always exhausted. I'm always tired. Now I'm beating myself up because I feel like I'm not serving myself or doing the things I need to do, or I can't seem to show up for the people I want to show up for because I feel like I'm always where I have to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like these are like taking my measurements. What am I looking at? Not even about solutions just yet. Let's just look at what we're at, and let's not judge ourselves for it, however we've been doing it. But let's just start with, let's get a base point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And being able to do that, like starting that way, a way you can do it is to inventory daily, even if it's at night. Checking in, like, what did my day look like? Trying to pair it with something you're already doing, the shower, your nighttime routine. Just really thinking about like what went well. Because a lot of times when I'm talking to people, having a therapist, depending on like the type of therapist or a coach, can be great because you get somebody that can hear you and mirrors,
Yeah.
and I'll say, oh, it sounds like when you're doing these different functions and with people, it sounds like you need some alone time. Like people don't realize that their bandwidth continues to get less and less the more they like people, but they can't do too many people. And they say yes to everything Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And the more we work together, they just say yes to one thing because they recognize, like, I do need my. So what Jermaine is, I'm giving an example on what Jermaine is saying is that because a lot of people, they're so used to being on the go all the time, they don't even recognize that is creating burnout for them, where they're not able to do the things they need to do throughout the week. They're having a great time, but then it's like it hinders them down the road. So that's an example. And a way to like really realistically like complete that task of inventory is just every night. Just so what went well, what didn't go well, how am I feeling? Like do a temperature check of how you're feeling. I'm exhausted. Oh, wow. What happened today? When you're not exhausted, what happened today?
Yeah.
Oh, I was able to go to the gym, or I was able to talk to this person, or I was able to watch this show, right? Like you start to understand like the things that it's not just about what's not working, but it's what is working. So you can make sure to make that part of your routine more often than not.
Yeah. And like I said, if we have to scale back or if we have to, ramp up, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like removing this, the judgment, a belief of what that means about me.
Yes. Yeah.
If I have to scale back the number of obligations I keep loading myself with, it's not an indictment on my self-worth or who I am. It's in fact, okay, well, you've been doing 10 things a day, and to go down to 6, oh, I can't handle things, or I can't this. No,
doesn't mean. Yeah, that lack of not doing the judgment thing is so important. I remember before I had kids, I was like, oh, my kids are gonna be in this and that. Like I was like, they're gonna be in dance and all this other stuff. And my 2 youngest are close in age, and I remember one was in football and one was in dance. And I was like, oh, that's it. I'm not about to be running around going to these practices. Yeah, like, oh, and I like I'm grateful for the awareness and the lack of judgment on myself, because I know some parents who are running around town and they're burnt out, but they say I want to give my kids a good experience because I didn't have it. That's great, but at what cost, right? And so not judge, because I didn't judge myself. I was like, I know I'm not built to be running the streets like this, because the and so I wanted to give an example on how sometimes the things you may have thought you were going to happen, or what a dad or a mom is, whatever role you're in,
Yeah.
it's supposed to look like. That may look good for somebody with 2 nannies, right, and a limited bank account, who may have a driver, but for somebody that ain't got no nanny or no driver, that don't look good for me. That's okay.
Yeah, and that's completely okay to say, okay, I don't have it in me, because
No.
we'll say, okay, I want my kids to have all these things and all these experience, and you say, to what cost? Okay, yeah, I was in soccer, I was in drama, I was in volleyball or lacrosse or whatever it's doing, but mom was always angry.
Yep.
She was always irritable,
Always tired.
always tired.
Yeah.
Dad always seemed angry.
Yeah.
He always had to work all the time so I could do all these things.
Yeah.
There is an other side to that. So then if you're saying, okay,
Yeah.
well, maybe I don't have them doing all these things, but I actually have the energy and the desire to be around them now.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Like when we're, chauffeuring these little people around all over town, this, then that, the first time we get a free minute, the first thing we think about is away from them. But maybe if they had 1 or 2 less activities, we'd be more inclined to want to engage in them because we're in the space to actually have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so if that's a decision we make, that's okay.
Yeah. And, it's important to gauge, why, like you said earlier, why you're doing it. Because a lot of times I notice parents, they didn't have those certain things and they say, oh, well, my kids are going to have it.
Yeah.
And so thinking about, they're not asking for this, right? Like this is something you think they need. But I promise you, kids want you. They want, like, all that other stuff is great. If you can afford private school, if you can, like I'm saying, go for it, especially if you feel like you have the bandwidth. But if you feel like you ain't got the bandwidth, I promise they're not missing out. They're missing out on having that parent there. Because anytime I work with parents and they're struggling with, oh, but my kid, and I'll be like, but what, like, your anxiety is out of control. Like, I'm sure that's playing a role in what's happening with them. They don't have language to express, hey, I think you're anxious and it's making me anxious. They're not going to say that, but your behavior is reflecting on what's happening with them. I have such a passion for parents, because I have the knowledge and I understand, and I think about how many don't have the knowledge on how to, like, it's okay to tell your kids, give me a minute. Like, it's okay to, like, be human around them. And you know what I mean? But I think that we're trying to reset our childhood with our kids, but we're forgetting about us in the process.
Yeah, I think it goes back to our portion in the beginning too, of how the system society we're in dampens that in us as we get older. Like, I believe as adults, we operate with our eyes, but children are like dolphins. They got like echolocation, like they feel stuff and they're 2 rooms away.
Yep.
So with
energy
us,
is transferable.
Yeah, we're dealing with what's in front of us, the conversation we had or the situation they have. They're clear, they're outside and they're feeling the energy bounce through the walls about our anxiety or our stresses or whatever. So the thing is, and then as they say, we get older, we get more and more removed from that type of thinking to where we lose that sensitivity to doing what's better serving us. But for kids, they're just like, I would rather have a much less stressed mom.
Yeah, if they can name it. Yeah, if they can name that, they would name that.
Yeah, it's like, I'd rather have a happier dad than soccer practice.
Yeah. A private school, like, it's a lot. And it's a lot. So paying attention to just taking an inventory, and as we're working on change is hard. And it's not, sometimes people are like, okay, how do I get there? And it's like, it's okay, one day at a time, right? Just taking inventory, looking at what's going well, what's not going well, just to observe. It's a great start.
Yes, the awareness part. Let's just look at what we're looking at. And when it comes to what we're looking at, being mindful of who we're looking at. because we have a very comparison based society.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
everything about what we do now is a form of comparison. Every social media thing is that you're comparing how many likes this person got to how many this one has, how many followers this one has, how many views this one has, this one, instead of just being, okay, these are tools or these are things for me to look at and learn. Now we can actually see the comparison analytics of what this is to what that is. And it's very easy to get caught up in what they're doing and making that important to us. She's a size 6. So her being a size 6 means I need to be a size 6.
Mm-hmm.
He wears a size 32 pants. I need to be wearing a size 32 pants. No, it's their situation may fit them perfectly. It's a perfectly tailored situation for whatever is going on in their life, with whatever they've gone through, whatever work they've done or not done, or the sunshine on their side of the sidewalk, whatever. Like that's their thing. The self-awareness part is that, okay, what is my thing?
Yeah.
Like I liken to that if you have children. If you had to give your kid a bath, you may only use like a couple inches of water in the tub to give them a bath because you want to be safe and it's necessary and that's all it is that's required for what they're doing. But if you have a teenager, they may say, I want to get in the tub and I want the water to be all the way, submerged to, to my chest so I could chill, get my spa on. Okay. You may want to have the exact same experience as your teenager. You want the water to submerge to your chest, but you and your teenager aren't the same size. So the amount of water that the teenager has to the amount of water that you have is not going to be the same.
Right.
And what we do is we look at how much water our neighbor has in the tub and we just get in the tub with that much water and now it's overflowing.
Yeah.
Or it's not reaching the level we want for the experience we want to have.
Yeah.
So instead of being hung up on, well, they spent X amount of dollars on this, or they drive that, or their kids are in all these programs, or he took her there, or she got him that. Yeah, that's their water level. What's my measurements? What's the size of my tub? How much water do I need? How much space do I take up for the experience that I'm trying to have?
I like that. So it sounds like, something I always say is comparing yourself to who you were yesterday, like really trying to look at your growth and your, like what you need as opposed to somebody else's growth. Because you could be taking them steps and then you turning the other way and you're like, dang, they're farther along. But at what cost, whatever their journey is their journey. And I think that's a huge thing that hinders people is the comparison piece. Some people realize they're doing it. Some people don't even realize that's what's happening. They'll realize they feel like crap when they get off of social media. And I'm pointing out, maybe you don't realize it, but you're stacking up your life to their life. And that's just highlighted life. Some people will do the other stuff, but most people are doing their highlighted life, their highlighted reels. They're not showing you the ins and out. And so as you're taking temperature and the baseline of like what's working for you and what's not working for you, pay attention to like if you are comparing it to somebody else and not your growth from yesterday.
Yeah. And it's also important too. Let's just say that is 100% real. That's not even the highlight reel we see on social media is actually the worst day of their week, but it just looks phenomenal to us. That's the case. That literally has nothing to do with us.
Still,
like if you ever gone to a restaurant that a friend recommended because they said they had the best meal they've ever had, and then you eat and order the exact same thing, and it's or take a vacation. Well, man, we went to Hawaii and we stayed at such and such, and it was the best time. And you go to the same place, stay in the same spot, and have a completely different experience.
Right.
Yeah, they had the best time there. That was the best meal they had, and for them, that was true.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with your palate, your taste buds, your comfort level with the mattress, the temperature you want the space to be at, what you like to look at. Like, just because that's true for somebody else, whether it be, blown up or pinpoint accurate, it does not carry over into that being our experience. So knowing, that suit looked great on him with that cut and that measurement, that got nothing to do with me.
And I just want to point out too that because a lot of this stuff is ingrained in the way that our culture operates. Because I don't want people to feel bad for their line of thinking. You know, we're I'm about to say communists. We're a society that functions off of like purchasing things, and so they want, you know, you may be your house may be nice and clean with your broom, but as soon as you see that little remote control vacuum that just goes, you be thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm missing out.
Yeah.
Can't afford it, but you're going to try to get it anyway because it looks pretty. Like the way that we function or the way that society advertises and things like that, we're taught how to look for the next best thing and to not be satisfied with what we have. Like, so it's not by accident. It's not like, why am I doing this? Even, you know, they have psychologists that are behind the scenes of these platforms to try to figure out how do we keep people on, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of this is designed. So I don't want you to feel like, you know, it's a you thing. No, it's a societal thing. Which is why one of my biggest things I talk about is the importance of being intentional with your time and your day and your environment. Because it's possible to not succumb to the ways that society has like created, but it's not going to happen by accident because their goal is to sell you things at the end of the day. So that's where it comes from. If you're not clear on why you think that way, it's not like you wasn't born to think that way. We are literally in a society that does not show us how to appreciate the now.
Yeah, there was a social media thing I saw not too long ago. I thought was funny. It was a guy, he was saying, why do we buy new clothes to go on vacation to be around people who've never seen us before?
Yeah.
Like they have no idea how old this
No.
shirt is. They have no idea if I've worn this every day for the last 3 weeks. This is the first time I've ever seen them, and I'm never going to see them again. Why am I so hung up on making these purchases to go someplace like it? And so, yeah, everything is designed. It's a very disposable system we're in, and that comparison stuff will kill us. Yeah. And that's why I think the important part is that if just looking at where we are today, how do I feel today with my situation? How do I feel today in my friendship circle? How am I in my personal relationship? How am I professionally? How do I may have the right career, but I don't like the energy in the office. I may like the city I'm in, but maybe not the side of town. Whatever's going on, like when we just start taking the inventory on how I'm feeling, how this is showing up for me. Okay, well, let me stop being about them. What is the issue I have with something that's going on? Okay, this is this. Okay, why? Because I'm overwhelmed, I'm underwhelmed, I'm stressed out, I'm anxious, and whatever. Okay, well, what are the things that are making me anxious? Are there things that I'm doing, or do the things that I need, or the things that are present or not present? Or let me just start looking at this stuff. Let me start just getting a good understanding. You know, like I said, that preliminary trip to the tailor. Of just seeing what this measurement are, what this space is. I may come back and realize this job does not fit me.
Right. Yeah.
And so I may not be in a position to quit today. I'm still gonna have to wear these tight pants.
Right.
For a little while longer. I know my true size. Like I think the two biggest things when people have wrong measurements are shoe size and women's bra sizes. I think where they came back in. That most people are wearing those two things are the wrong size for them because they don't actually get them properly measured. And so your feet hurt because you size too small.
Yeah.
So you realize now, I'm supposed to be in a 10. I've been squeezing in this 9 for the last year and a half, and I can't understand why my feet are swollen every day at the end of work. Okay, I may not have the money to buy new shoes today, but I now know I need a size 10.
Right.
So let me start putting things in place to where I can start saving some money here, do this over here, so I can afford to start buying 10s from now on. You know, and so that may not happen in January. You may not have 10 money in January.
Right.
But at least you now know what you're working towards, and you can identify why your feet hurt.
Yeah.
It's not because you're standing up all day. It's got nothing to do with you having to walk back and forth. It has to do with you got the wrong size shoe on. So that's a start. Yeah,
I like that. And there's something powerful about understanding what's happening and being able to identify it, you know, and having a plan, even if it's not happening right now. Like anybody that has gone to the doctor for something and the doctor's like, oh, this is what's going on, but we got to do X, Y, and Z to help clear it up. Even though you may still have pains and aches here and there, like you have this plan and you know what you need to do. And I think a lot of people struggle is that they don't have a plan. They can't identify it. They don't know what to do. They don't know what and you can be like you're with yourself all the time. And, if you're making space to pay attention to what's happening, you can actually start to rule out and rule in some things, believe it or not. Like you do have the ability to do that, but it does take patience, grace, and being very non-judgmental with yourself in order for that to happen.
Yeah, I think a good tool when you start to move forward of the things that I will do is, can you identify the things you can do and the things that you won't do?
I like that.
So what's going to go on my will do list? Well, first off, what can I do? What makes sense? What's in the realm of possibility for time and energy and effort, whatever. And then what I won't do.
Yeah.
Like let me clear out some of this stuff, because if I have the won't do stuff on the same list of options as will do and can do, that list is incredibly long.
Yeah.
And that can become overwhelming. That's using up bandwidth. That's using up energy. That can cause a degree of anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
Like 52 things to get done. Yeah, but 30 of them you ain't gonna do anyway.
Right.
Get them 30 off the list. I'm not picking you up from the airport.
Right. Especially with Uber and
$500. That's what I won't do.
Right. You got to understand that. You got to understand what your limitations are.
Yes, and so when we can start to clear that stuff out, and like I said, this is without judgment. Those things that we're going to start scaling away, those things we're identifying that we deem as problematic when in regards to the life we want to live, that's fine. This is just an inventory. This is just the tape measure is not telling you this is a good or bad length.
Yeah, good. I like it.
It's just telling you what the length is.
Yeah.
It's just showing you the depth. It's just showing you the width. That's all it's showing you. And so when we can just say a measurement is just a measurement. 32 inches is 32 inches. That's it. Like, and just stop it there. I just need to know what my measurements are. I just need to know where I'm working with. Now, if I want to be a 30 from a 32, or I want to be I don't know women's size, like a 4 from an 8, whatever. Okay. Right. And then I need to start putting some things in place to get that happen. But I just need to start with, what are they?
Yeah.
What is the space I'm taking up? What is the space required? What is being required of me in this current size, this current space? And if I can get that as my theme for the year, so as I go through the year, understanding where my measurements are in my communication, my measurement are in my relationships, how I deal with my family, how I am financially, how I operate socially, how I, what I'm doing in school, what I do, if I can start I have a clear understanding of how I show up everywhere I show up.
Yeah.
Now I can get a little more control of the thermostat.
Yeah.
And I can help kind of regulate a little bit better. I may not get it to the ideal temperature I want to be, but I can get it closer than it is right now. And I can get it to a much more desirable space.
I love it. This is good. I'm sure we'll be talking about it again some more over the course of the year. But I think we've given people a great start with the process of understanding. And, what I love about when we talk is the emphasis on not judging yourself. It's an area a lot of people are struggling with. So I appreciate that part of your platform and what you do. Tell people, if they wanted to work with you, how they can reach you.
Yes, if you have any questions or interest on the DISC assessment, taking the test itself, you can go to mykeystome.com. That's MYKEYSTOME, My Keys to Me. And you get information on the assessment, as well as you set you up with a consultation to go over like what the test is, what it does, and also do coaching if you want to take the information from the assessment and then help show how to apply it and the different things going on with your life. It's a great tool professionally. I use it with some companies when it comes to staffing and hiring, management training, and that sort of stuff, as well as on the personal development side, where people who want to make choices or want to make changes in their lives, and gives them a good base point of tangible information. And because the test comes with a 22-page report about you. Yeah. And so I was joking to say that human beings will come with the owner's manual. This is ultimately yours. So it gives you a good base point, solid information, and it's a good starting point to make some changes if you desire.
I agree. Yep. Well, Jermaine, thank you. This was an amazing conversation. I'm sure a lot of people are probably turning their heads right now and trying to figure out what's happening in their life today. So as you listen to this, like you could start today, literally, with just taking that inventory. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm always about that. Start today with where you are with what you have.